So I work with a range of groups up and down New Zealand called the Curious Cockies, and that came out of the RMPP, or the Red Meat Profit Partnership project several years ago, and is carried on with the Beef and Lamb Action Group. So the stories out of my book have come out of there. But yeah, it's that whole thing around, you know, why should farmers be curious about reading this book? Not just farmers, but anybody. You know, it's why should you go there? Well, I don't know if you've been talking to many in the last wee while, but farmers will tell you that they're really stressed. It's not just in New Zealand, but in a lot of other places as well. You know, they're stressed with compliance. I don't know if that's going to change all of a sudden with the new government. There's stress with technology. There's stress with debt, inflation, risk, all those kinds of things. And if you spend as much time as I do with farmers, they tell you certain things. And one of those things is that there's a time and place where they are absolutely certain of the outcome with utmost confidence about the activity that they're engaging in. There's one time and place, and that's in this room, right? 5 minutes in there every morning, they're absolutely confident about what's going to happen regarding the outcome of that activity they do. So what I'm saying to farmers, what I'm saying is, during that moment of peace and solitude, while you're gazing about the world there, maybe that's an opportunity to learn an idea or an insight without the fear of being caught with your pants down, right? So, you know, you've all heard of Gideon's Bible. Well, Curiosity is a dunny read, right? It's full of short stories, mostly case studies. It's experience-based, and it's a lot around observations, okay? And you can immerse yourself in a world of wisdom, common sense, profit, and practicality. And I've even thought of the next step there in terms of climate change and all the rest of it, because if the content bores you, then you're in the right place and time to repurpose that paper and add to the circular economy. Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's where you are. And of course, the other thing too, this book is for serious thinkers and doers in agriculture. It's not for recreationists. There is no glossy centerfold, and there is no tractor porn, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, I put it to you, pull your pants up, read the reviews, check out the quotes, and buy a copy and become inspired. Now, before you all race up here and offer me money and land, marriage maybe, I don't know, what I suggest is that you just wait a little bit longer. We're just going to go through a little bit more here, because curiosity is the engine of achievement. And when you leave here, you'll want to hit the road with your motor running, right? All good. So, so where did the inspiration for the book come from? Well, these are three very useful authors that I draw on all the time. Charlie Massey and his work around transformational learning. That's what happens to farmers when they decide to leave the industrial mindset. Okay, Alan Nation for decades has been talking about agribusiness principles. You know, where do you find the cheapest profit? That's what he's all about, right? And Alan Savory, who I've been following for many years now, his framework, decision-making framework, is all about unmasking hegemony, right? And I know it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a 4-syllable word, and some of you guys will be glazing over a wee bit with the word hegemony, but bear with me, we'll come to that in a second, and I'll explain a wee bit more about what that is. But this is the kind of topics that the book ranges through, okay? There's a whole range of things here, way more things I could put on a slide up here, otherwise you'd be staring at it like trying to read a tattoo on a fly's leg. I'm not going to put you through that, okay? We're going to cover a lot of other bits and pieces, but I can tell you that the first step in the discovery process is usually an epiphany, okay? That surprise, that moment where something unexpected happens. In rural terms, that's where we get the phrase bugger me. That's what often is associated with this epiphany, right? And it might be something as simple as just observing what's going on in the paddock, which is what Chris Ensor was experiencing here. He saw better pasture where his livestock camped overnight, okay? Maya Smith's epiphany was real. It's a really hilarious thing, right? He was there with Christine Jones. She's bossing him around the paddock, trying to dig holes, all that kind of stuff. And the change there was so significant in terms of the soil structure and the soil colour that Maya will tell you he went back the next day to dig 50 holes to make sure it was right across the whole paddock, whereas over the fence, the soil was exactly the same as it was before, right? Significant changes. John McRae. His thing had nothing to do with the farm. It was his health. He'd spent thousands of dollars getting medical tests done, but it was only 20 minutes with an alternative treatment that he found something that could help him out. That then led to changes in his in his farm business. Okay, and you know, everybody here knows Hamish. We know who put a bomb under his ass, and that was Christine Jones. And she was pointed out to him that farmers get 4 things for free: sunlight, rain, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. And of course, one of those is the nastiest, stinking pollutant in the planet at the moment, called carbon dioxide. And farmers take that and create oxygen and a whole lot of other compounds and services that are really great for humanity. And I don't know if they get nearly enough appreciation for that, right? Well, that kind of thing. Okay, according to Charlie Massey, of these sort of epiphanies, okay, 60% of them are significant events that make farmers flip. Might be a drought, might be a flood, might be bankruptcy, could be marriage breakdown, your kid dies or whatever, that kind of thing. Those are the kinds of things that really flip people. And the rest are a cascade of events that they all challenge your personal beliefs, right? And what Charlie's really talking about there is a concept called hegemony. Hegemony is the assumptions we embrace as being in our best interests, when in fact they're working against us. Okay, give you an example of that. This is Dean Martin in the Hawke's Bay. Okay, it was clear focusing on quality feed did nothing for drought resilience. Therefore, his focus changed from quality to quantity. So what was happening there is that the industry practice wasn't giving him the flexibility he needed. Okay, Tim Rutherford over at Terrace. Okay, we talked a wee minute ago about microbes that actually eat atrazine. For him, spraying this on his lucerne actually created more problems than if he didn't. Complete opposite of what he was told. Okay, another sort of issue there. Okay, David Fincham. Okay, David's hilarious, right? He's found that if he makes more supplements, he makes dumb decisions like hang on to his livestock for too long. That's like sitting on a sinking ship, realizing that all those swimming lessons you took years and years ago mean that you're just going to take longer to drown. And that's basically what he's talking about, right? Okay. And but this one here is really this observation from Alan Gortner is a real pearler. Okay, farmers fail to achieve spring production when they stop focusing on feeding, meaning grazing management. Okay, and take more paddocks out with young grass and Swedes in an already tight system. In other words, industry best practice, which is all about trying to crank up feed for later in the season, is diverting your focus and your resources, and as a result, you miss the opportunity that's right in front of you. Okay, all righty. So when farmers have had that realization about hegemony, then quite often there's a second epiphany. And this is where they get a sort of a kick along to really push things along, okay? And this one here with Will Innes typifies this surprise that farmers get when doing the multi-species thing. They wander into the crop and there's this incredible buzz. You're not going to get this watching Country Calendar, right? It's a 3D thing that's in surround sound, all the rest of it, and that just blows them into the weeds compared to walking next door into the fodder crop, into the fodder beet crop, right? Completely different, okay? And lots of farmers experience this, okay? Al Meyer, this is absolutely hilarious. 250 R2 bulls and one mob. Everybody will tell you in New Zealand that is impossible, it can't be done, you must be mad, all those kinds of things, right? He now actually has more time shifting those bulls up to 8 times a day than he did with 12 mobs of 20, shifting them once every 2 days. In fact, he's growing so much grass, he had to ask the neighbour with his 450 cow dairy herd to come in and clean up a whole lot just the other day, because he was just, that's how far ahead he is, and no fertiliser. Really quite interesting. Alan Crowe. His observations about animal health, this is one of the first things farmers talk about when changing systems. The animal health significantly changes. Having your ticks fall off, goodness me. You know, that's something that you notice as a farmer, because you have a relatively good understanding of how your animals are. And if you're seeing that with your animals every day, then you know you're getting ahead. And Maurice Hallowell, okay, so he stumbled into taking an annual and creating it into a perennial pasture just by letting it seed every second year. And as a result, he generated so much biomass that he ended up irrigating only half the farm. I can guarantee you right here and now, he's probably not going to get an environmental award because he's not spending any money. Okay? All righty. And that takes us into another kind of territory. There's a dark side to hegemony, right? And Stephen Brookfield points this out, is that we embrace enthusiastically a system of beliefs or practices or whatever that end up harming us and working to support the interests of others who have power over us, okay? And this is where we climb into industry, okay? And that leads you to become a heretic. And that's why the journey is so lonely, okay? FarmStrong doesn't have a policy for this. Rural Trust doesn't help you out with this, okay? Nobody does if you're going down another path that's not industry-based, okay? That becomes the drama. Okay, as Dave Campbell says, the whole current situation has arisen from professionals presenting models to farmers about how to farm. Okay, why did it take a judge from the Crown Court to point out to the scientific, the consultancy, and the policy-making communities how unjust it was to penalise farmers using a technology that could be up by up to 50%? Overseer. What did it take a Crown judge to do that? As I pointed out to people who are lay people, if your bathroom scales are out by up to 50%, what level of trust would you have in the technology, let alone the people that designed and developed it with your money? That's the drama, okay? Farmers don't mind change, but they do like to be respected in terms of what they're doing, and they don't want to be a guinea pig because they're paying at both ends, okay? Yeah, the science is going to upset a few people this way. Okay? Scientists will tell you everything about why a practice or a product is beneficial, but never harmful. What the harm about it? Okay, this is Simon Osborne talking about this, and what he is saying. Farmers get, okay, that as a scientist, you have to strip away the context from the data to get a line of logic to explain the outcome. Farmers get that. What they're interested in is all the detritus that you've stripped away, because that's where all the real learning is. Okay. Because otherwise they go out there with a false sense of certainty, and they realise that it doesn't work in every single situation because their farm's different from the neighbour or where the research does, that kind of thing. Okay. Anything management puts onus on our creativity against any input solution, which means we arrange finance. So what Malcolm and Twix White are talking about there is that if you pick option 2, enjoy your servitude. Okay, because you've just abdicated any responsibility you've had about, or any accountability you've got about your success or otherwise to somebody else. Okay, you've given that away. Okay, and maybe the one that's really hits the nail on the head is this great observation by Max Pennell. Okay, just how few tools there are out there for challenging science with common sense for farmers. That's where a real struggle is, okay? And Max was involved with the whole thing around Overseer, and for 10 years trying to get to the bottom of that. And by the way, you won't hear Groundswell pointing out that Damien O'Connor was the one that actually kicked Overseer into touch, okay? Okay, so what that does is that we're really leading into this hegemony about finding the opposite. You've got this dialogue that farmers are interested in generating, this whole thing of how do you create opportunities with authorities to challenge the one-size-fits-all policy. And in fact, it's possibly even worse than that. I was talking with an Australian colleague yesterday. He's involved with 130 farms on the biggest regenerative research project in the world at the moment. And he's saying one of the problems that they have is how do you even create permission to challenge the beliefs of those who have all the power and are always right? How do we go about doing that as farmers, okay? Now, one of the things, and we talked a wee bit about today, and this is from Malcolm and Twix White Place, is around the soil carbon issue. Okay, there's going to be an article in next week's Farmers Magazine from Louis Schipper saying, yes, I'm right, my models prove that the whole thing around soil carbon is a load of rubbish, okay? And then you look at the little fine prints at the bottom regarding his projects, and it's all to 30 centimetres. Okay, This is way deeper than 30 centimetres. Okay, and this is the potential that we have, particularly in this kind of country, for sequestering carbon. Okay, it's there. By the way, this photograph was taken only 4 years after the Aussies proved that plants sequestered carbon. And when we first showed it, even Christine Jones and Nicole Masters, those kinds of people, even weren't quite sure then what was actually, the photograph was actually showing. Now we know for sure what's going on, okay? And it shifts pretty quickly. There's sort of another area too around hegemony as well. Is there anybody that here that's not heard of Alan Savory and his concept of brittleness? Put your hand up or whatever. Okay, so brittleness has to do with the moisture, the annual distribution of moisture at the soil surface. The more brittle an environment is, the more likely the rainfall is highly regular or extremely seasonal. You might have a 1500 millimetre rainfall, but it might all fall in 4 weeks. Okay, in those environments you need disturbance, particularly from ruminants, because what happens in their rumen, in their gut, actually substitutes what should be happening in the soil. Okay, and what we've got here is on one side of the fence, you've got all the power, wealth and knowledge of the government, an organisation that's told us that we're in a climate emergency, that we're on a war footing, and yet for some reason or other, it's the other side of the fence that's doing all the heavy lifting. They're the ones that are actually creating a longer growing season. That's why the plants there are still green. They're still sucking in carbon. It's probably holding more water, probably got more carbon in the soil. It probably even has more biodiversity, okay? And yet, so that whole thing around removing animals from this particular landscape actually sends us backwards in terms of how that landscape functions and its climate change potential in terms of dealing with it. Okay, that whole tool of rest, the whole tool of removing disturbance. If we use that same concept in a non-brittle environment, which is a more temperate kind of environment, we get kind of the opposite happening. On the left here, you've got where grazing's happening, you've got a grass pasture going right down to the water's edge. Yet on the other side where the grazing has been removed, you've got woody weeds appearing all of a sudden. So the farmer there was pointing out how much herbicide he's now got to use. That leaves desiccating woody weeds standing up there. So you've now got a huge fire risk because it's not being absorbed into the soil. On top of that, you've got a river bank there that's actually sheer. So every time it floods, it adds more gravel to the channel. And then, of course, when that falls in, the woody weeds falls in and goes and blocks somebody else's culvert down the road. If you're not paying to clean that, then the council does. That lifts your rates. Okay? All those dramas, okay? Because we're not actually using the tool of livestock to actually help mitigate those issues. The farmer, by the way, doesn't want what's on the left there, okay? But he wants less what's actually happening on the right. Okay, he wants to try and find a way of getting a mix of the both. Okay, and a lot of farmers are in that space. Okay, so no one's really talking, even in the media, about the beneficial role that livestock can play in climate change. And we haven't even talked about that today. Okay, accelerating soil carbon storage, stabilising riparian areas, improving rainfall infiltration, reducing wildfires, and transferring nutrients and seeds, all those kinds of things. Okay. Here's something I'm just going to spook a few of you, okay? What if in the northern hemisphere, their summer, what if all those fires that were raging there weren't actually created by climate change, but through poor management, allowing fuel loads to get out of control, and they is the problem. There's no grazing management happening in any of those areas, just like at Lake Ohau a couple of years ago with Doc, okay? Same thing, okay? So, and I put this out there, is there any regional authority, livestock agency or insurance company that's up for demonstrating how we can use livestock to benefit climate change as an ecological tool? Okay, so it's a rhetorical question. I don't expect anybody to have an answer, but that's all good. But of course, the next thing is there won't be a rush for that because it might involve these little buggers, right? And you talk to anybody in New Zealand about goats, okay? They avoid them like the plague. And yet around the globe, local authorities have realised herding of goats is more effective and safer than brush cutting gangs and herbicides for controlling weeds and reducing fire risk. Okay? It's not that bad. Okay, it's all in the contract, right? So ladies and gentlemen, okay, Address root cause with curiosity, okay? You cannot be curious unless you come with a sense of ignorance, believe it or not. If you come to a problem with a solution, there's not going to be a lot of curiosity, right? It involves action, reflection, and critical thinking. It delivers contradictions. So even in the book, you'll find contradictions about what people get up to, and there are political and social ramifications. But the most important thing, I think, is that it's an opportunity to celebrate farmers who've had the courage to be different and to go and find the solutions to the problems that they've been dealt with in their own circumstances, and that's worth celebrating. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm John King, and you've been a very patient audience with me for my last 20 minutes or so. Is there anybody got a question?